Well, so much for that Oshinoko review. So, DanDaDan came out, a show that has been incredibly hyped up since they decided to announce it and dominated all anime discussion towards the end of the year. Granted, this doesn't surprise me at all, considering DanDaDan's author, Yukinobu Tatsu, was originally an assistant for a certain other manga that also had an extreme amount of hype when it was first announced. That, of course, being fellow Weeb review guest, Chainsaw Man. A review I was so nervous about I almost scrapped that video entirely. Twice. However, instead of MAPPA, this one was instead grabbed by the team over at Science Saru, while also being Director Fuga Yamashiro's directorial debut. Man, starting high early, aren't you, buddy? Who had previously done storyboard work for other Science Saru shows such as Heiki Monogatari and Izoken, and being the episode director for Science Saru's movie Inuo O last year. So I suppose the big question surrounding the series is, does it live up to the hype? And honestly, I think it does. DanDaDan has a little bit of everything you'd want from a shounen anime while also being very unique in how it approaches character development, storytelling, and animation techniques. Even though we're very early on in its run, there was enough in this introductory season to excite me about where this show will go in the future. It still definitely has some work to do, which I'm guessing will be figured out in the later seasons. But overall, I was shocked at just how easy of a watch this was. But let's get a little bit more in depth now. Ken Takakura... Oh, god dang it, cut. Okarun, as our lovely heroine calls him, is a normal kid with a pretty weird love for all things aliens. One day, our previously mentioned formerly flustered main girl, Momo Ayase, saves him from getting bullied and then gets into a debate with Okarun about aliens versus ghosts. This leads to Okarun going to a popular haunted house spot and Ayase going to a popular alien abduction spot. Fast forward a little here, and we can see Okarun gets cursed by this yokai called Turbo Granny by getting his dick taken away. Meanwhile, Ayase got kidnapped by a bunch of Serpo aliens who want to rape her, take her reproduction organs so they can reproduce themselves. Well, that was quite a leap forward, huh? However, a rape scene in the first episode would be quite edgy, so before anything else could happen, Okarun busts in using the power of the Turbo Granny that he got cursed by, and Momo uses her genetically given psychic powers to free herself. Afterwards, they create a spiritual hunting duo of sorts, with the main plot line being getting Okarun's dick and later balls back from the Turbo Granny so the curse on him can be lifted. As they keep defeating aliens and yokai, the two grow closer together, even showing some romantic interest. DanDaDan's interesting to me because it's a shounen, but it doesn't have a super serious, overarching, encompassing plotline with characters that have a moral reason to be there, which is quite rare. There isn't a main villain the characters are chasing, an emotional reason outside of Okarun wanting his dick back, which I would be kind of emotional about that, to be doing all of this. And there are serious moments, but DanDaDan for the most part is fun and simple, which I think is a good thing. I talked about this before, but when you have a fantasy or really any kind of non-realistic elements in your show, it can expand your creative horizons, and as long as it makes sense in the ground rules that you yourself set, you can really do whatever you want. And boy do they! DanDaDan's the first show I've seen in a while that accepts how goofy and unserious an adventure shonen anime about hunting ghosts can be. We're watching two teenagers with powers fighting yokai and aliens. It's such a goofy idea, and yet DanDaDan understands this to a T. There are so many random things that just kinda made me laugh in this series. I particularly love the fact that Okarun gets all depressed when he uses his power. It's a cute little play on the whole main character gets an edgy power-up trope in anime, and it was just funny to me. As well as actual references to real-life alien theories, like the cow getting abducted thing and how they made sense of all that. It was quite genius, to be honest, and was comedic. But despite the overall silliness in the show, that doesn't mean DanDaDan doesn't have the serious moments at times. I mentioned it's goofy, but it does take the severity of the aliens and yokai very seriously. They set up people such as the Serpos as being these vicious monsters, and they don't take them lightly at all. I get a lot of people don't like the sexual assault angle they went, and that's fair and all. If they had actually done something, I would have been turned off, would have been way edgier than necessary. but it does create these disgusting villains you want to see Momo kick the shit out of. Plus it references the theory of real-life aliens doing weird tests like that on humans. I've talked about this before and I'll probably say it again. I get why people are against these kinds of scenes, especially if they're victims themselves. And I don't mean to come off as unsympathetic, but I feel like anime should be allowed to talk about stuff like this. I get it doesn't have the best history, but I don't think that means we should shun away or pull clutch the whole idea when it's so prevalent in our society today. I actually liked the way DanDaDan handled the little sexualization portions because the fan service has always been played up by the fact that they're two awkward teens with feelings for each other, and the SA stuff is just to set up the villains who are doing villainous shit. Again, I get why people would be uncomfortable, but it's not like it's meant to be comforting, you know? I would kinda understand the argument if they were like making jokes about the fact that that almost happened to Momo, but they don't. But that is just my opinion, I guess. Probably the best example of this show's tonal shift at times is how they tackle some of these aliens and yokai's backstories. There are two ways to handle monsters in a monster hunting show. There are probably more, but these are the most notable ones. You can show them as being these destructive, terrifying beings to show the viewer that they are not to be underestimated, or you can set them up as being monsters due to unfortunate circumstances. Maybe not people anymore, but human enough to be related to and understood. The most notable example is Acrobat Silky, which was an episode so good that I have to dedicate an entire section of this video in order to talk about it. Episode 7 is a beautiful example of show don't tell, which is actually something DanDaDan as a whole does really well, but it's the best here. There are maybe a couple of sentences spoken in this backstory, but you see just what Silky had to go through. They never tell you she was selling herself or why she was doing all this. It subtly told you every detail. And for the final scene to be her looking up in the sky, wishing for a better life for her and her daughter, to the abrupt transition to her life slowly crashing down, holy shit. She was willing to do anything for her daughter, but that same willingness caused her to lose everything. And in the end, she never got to see her daughter again. That moment between her and Ira was so bittersweet because we know Ira isn't her real daughter. We don't even know what ever happened to her real daughter. But for the first time in a while, Silky was comforted, and it helped her pass on to hopefully be with her daughter again. You think the tonal switch here would feel sudden, but this anime handled that transition perfectly. And it's the first time the series tells you that yes, they may be monsters, but it's never that simple. There was also the mantis shrimp backstory, which isn't as emotional, but it was still a relatable story of a hardworking father trying to help his kid. Hell, the mantis shrimp in general was just a very creative, fun, but also realistic portrayal of a Japanese salaryman working for their family. From him basically talking to his kid the whole fight, to the Serpos essentially using steroids despite his consent not to. It was quite a great portrayal. Again, something the series does really well is relating the aliens back to humans. Like even the Serpos are very clearly modeled after creepy boss archetypes. Overall, DanDaDan is a pretty simple story that shows signs of having an emotional turn in the later seasons. But this was a cool little introduction for now. I love the focus on just having fun with this idea and fully exploring the concepts of aliens and yokais existing in our world. You think the pace would be a little fast, but I think it works well for that cartoon vibe it was going for. Moments still feel important and impactful despite the faster, more cartoony pace. My only issue with this season of DanDaDan specifically, and it isn't really DanDaDan's fault, they're not the anime that started this, but this new trend of anime clearly being written to have more episodes but stopping at 12 for marketing reasons, I just don't like it. DanDaDan is another example where it basically stops mid-arc. I just wish this series creatively led to the next season with the introduction of Gigi being the big season hook, rather than just abruptly stopping mid-arc, you know? I just think that's kinda boring. I'm not sure what anime started that, but I'm noticing it more and more, and I get 2 cores aren't the norm these days, but at least try to have a transition between seasons. DanDaDan's story isn't perfect, it's a little episodic, fast-paced, and it ends in an awkward spot, but it's also a really fun show that shows signs of an emotional story later on. I usually do different sections for each of the characters, but it's not really needed here. DanDaDan's cast doesn't really fall into a specific trope, or dere as we like to say around here, and it helps the 2 main characters especially feel like 2 real people. while I know where most people want to start, and we'll get to her, I actually wanted to start with Okarun first. A character I found a lot more fun than I was initially expecting. While the whole nerd trope in anime is used loosely, Okarun is probably one of the more realistic portrayals I've seen. He's a shy and a little reserved young kid, but once you get to know him, he's a pretty sweet guy who generally cares for people. And the whole reason he got into Aliens is because it's an escape from the wood. You probably know an Okarun. Hell, there's a decent chance you are Okarun. I know I was. How do you think I ended up with an anime YouTube channel? So when Momo comes into his life, he fights for it. Because for people like Okarun, a person like that is very rare. So he does fight for her. He wants to get better for her. So he wants to fight and get better just so he can stand on equal footing. It's really, really adorable. I like the fact he realized in every fight, Momo is usually the one who takes the initiative, which leads to him attempting to get stronger so he can start saving her. He's a character you want to root for in his growth to get stronger as a fighter, but also as a person. A huge focus is that he sees himself as less than compared to Ayase. It's why he gets so insecure when Gigi appears, cause this is the Chad that Ayase used to date. I want to see where Okarun goes as a character, but I actually related to him in a way as a fellow awkward glasses-wearing nerdy looking dude with a weird niche infatuation with a hobby. It's a simple character, but it worked. Okay, now it's time for Momo Ayase. Yeah, keep the applause down. Probably the best character in this show so far. I think Ayase was a huge breath of fresh air. Again, on the outside, it may look like she's the typical Gyaru type that befriended the nerdy type. Something pretty popular in anime right now. But Ayase is likable in a different way. She's a stubborn and independent girl, but she can also be goofy and cute in her own way. She doesn't really judge Okarun for being a nerd, and when she is mean to him, it more has to do with the fact she can't come to grips with her feelings and usually apologizes when she does act up. Similar to Okarun, she just felt real. And when they're together, they're a really fun couple to follow because they bounce off of each other so well. It's kinda rare to come across a girl that just oozes as much charisma as Ayase does, especially in shounen anime. And it creates a very entertaining but also relatable main character. Hell, she kinda feels like Nobara, oddly enough. She's the same kind of fun, stubborn, but also mature, badass main female character. But Nobara kinda got sidelined, whereas Ayase is front and center throughout the whole show. I loved Ayase for reasons that are kinda hard to explain, unless you've watched the show. She has a fun personality, a relatable story where she also went through bullying, and just for the fact that she's a really entertaining main character to follow. There are some other characters in DanDaDan. Some of these can be pretty hit or miss. Two of the characters I can imagine to be a little polarizing are Irie and Gigi, both of whom were introduced so that Ayase and Okarun can start to feel a little jealous. Irie loves Okarun to the point of borderline obsession and thinks of herself as the main character, meanwhile Gigi is Momo's ex and they seem to still get along. Gigi still needs a little more time for me though. He's barely in this season, but he was a character I'm iffy on as a whole. I do think he can be funny at times, but he's also a character who always turns it up to 11 and sometimes that can get grating. His sleep paranoia side is interesting though. That was set up wonderfully. But again, there's just not a lot of time with Gigi. I can talk about Iwa though, who I actually kinda like. Yeah, I have a biased love for narcissist characters, but I also think this could be such an interesting character depending on where they decide to go from here. Beneath this character that she is the best is someone who's lost. She needs that validation, she needs that recognition just to be able to function properly. It's embedded in her because she grew up with the mindset that she has to be better than everyone. And as a teen, that is being popular, being a little vain. Hence why she doesn't like Ayase much because she one-upped her. Yes, she is flawed, but it is understandable once you put the pieces together that she can't lose because that's what her mother wanted. Mix that with a terrible environment that validated this behavior and you get what you see before you. And when she does realize that she does do Momo wrong, she does apologize. This proves that she's not a bad person, just a flawed teenager who grew up without a mother. Again, it's not complete. I still want to see more stuff involving her mom and maybe a little more on her mindset, but I feel like Iowa could be a very compelling case of how grief and allowing a toxic mindset to fester can do to someone so young. Outside of Iowa though, there are some characters who are just kinda cool. For example, Seiko, Ayase's grandma, is an enjoyable character overall, for no particular reason other than she's just really cool at times. And I like how she and Turbo Granny bond over old people things later on. I also like Ayase's friend group, mostly cause I was worried they'd be stereotypical Gyaru types, but they're actually really supportive and don't hate on Okarun just for being a nerd. I don't know, it was a pleasant surprise to me. If DanDaDan will win you with anything, brother, it's the visuals. Holy crap, does Science Saru bring out the big guns with this one. Science Saru always has a way of incorporating color into their shows in a way that gives their shows a vibrant feel, even in the shows I wasn't a massive fan of. Just cool uses of colors and different styles to nail the over-the-top action scenes. There are a lot of POV shots. There was one scene where they play flashbacks through the eyes of the characters, which was a lot more creative than just having a cut. And other little things like that that just made DanDaDan feel unique. This was Fuga Yamashiro's directorial debut, and I believe him and the rest of the team knocked it out of the park with what a DanDaDan anime adaptation is supposed to be. But obviously the peak has to be episode 7. An episode which I have to give Shuda Inomoto a lot of credit since he was the main storyboarder and key animator for this episode in particular. He's been around for a minute, but this is a name you have to remember because my god did this episode kill it. I already talked about the subtle storytelling, but also the uses of camera angles and music to put you into the story, and probably the best first person shot usage I've seen in anime. These elements are used in a way so you feel like you're there, witnessing the tragedy unfold in real time, and the POV shot of Silky chasing down the kidnappers really hammered home that feeling of desperation, desperately trying to get back the one thing she worked for all this time. It's a beautiful episode that completely stopped me in my tracks. I haven't had that happen since Oshinoko with Akane, but this was that much better to me. A perfect example of how to tell a story while barely saying a word. And while that episode is the peak of this series, that vibrant rich color is all over the season, and it makes DanDaDan one of the most artistically beautiful shows of the year. I love the different colors it used for the fight scenes too, like Silky had pink, the Turbo Granny had the red, the Sumo had the noir color, the dragon had this green, and I like the designs of the monsters themselves. There's some really good looking CGI here that has some crisp movements and refined details. Overall, I think the visuals are brilliant. A mixture of fun, colorful, action heavy, but also emotionally gripping when it needs to be. Sure, why not? We can start with the OP. Not really much to say about it that you haven't already heard though. I do think Japanese rap as a whole can be pretty hit or miss for me. A lot of the time, it's the delivery that bothers me more than anything. Like you're trying to impress me too much with your rhymes rather than just naturally gliding on the beat. That's not just the Japanese rap issue, by the way. But here's the thing with Creepy Nuts. They don't have that issue. This song, for example. This is a weird ass beat, but he is widening this thing. Pause. And it makes the song just a catchy vibe in a way I'm not sure anyone else would have been able to do. And that's kinda what makes Creepy Nuts stick out to me. Plus, repeating the show name at the start was pretty smart. That got caught on my head immediately. It's unorthodox, it's weird, but it's also perfect for DanDaDan, and it makes it one of the best OPs of the year. A title Creepy Nuts is getting used to considering Call the Night was up there for me in 2022, and Mashle is up there for me this year as well. For what it's worth, I think the ending is also pretty fun. Zudomayo can sing, my brother. And there's also a dope bassline that gets caught in your head if you hear it. Now time for the actual soundtrack. Completely randomly, this show would drop a remix of a classical song in there during a fight scene, which was very hype and made me laugh. The music was done by Kensuke Ushio. Yeah, no, the Devilman Kensuke Ushio. A silent voice Kensuke Ushio. So yeah, the soundtrack is pretty good, man. Some songs made me bop my head during the fight scenes, which is all I can ask for, honestly. Alright, let's kick it off with the main two. So Ayase was done by Shion Wakayama. She's been getting a lot of main girl awards as of late, and I think she does a good job here. Ayase has a lot of personality, and Shion was able to perform that perfectly, blending the elements between the stubborn, more reckless Ayase, but also the cuter, shyer Ayase really well. Meanwhile, Okarun was played by Natsuki Hane. He did a good job though too, obviously. And together I think these two have great chemistry, which makes Ayase and Okarun's more than friends but less than lovers relationship a lot of fun. But I also think Ayane Sakura as Aira was also pretty good. I think it's kind of funny a girl who regularly voices main heroines is playing the character who also thinks of herself as a main heroine. It's probably because Ayane Sakura is literally everywhere and it's a coincidence, but screw you, okay? My reality can be whatever I want it to be. Honestly, there were just a lot of really talented veterans all over the cast, which makes the performances here all stand out in some way. Mayumi Tanaka and Nana Mizuki are the voices of Turbo Granny and Ayase Grandma, for example, and those are two literal legends. I also want to give a huge shout out to Tomokazu Seiki because that song sung by the Manish Shrimp made me laugh. Overall, it's a fun cast. Not much else to say. DanDaDan is a fun show. It's a shounen that doesn't shy away from embracing the weird sides of an adventure and leans into it so heavily that it becomes funny, with pieces of a more serious story thrown in there at points. While I don't think DanDaDan is a show that's gonna light the anime world on fire story-wise, I still think it's a really awesome, easy to watch shonen with interesting characters, a fun relationship dynamic, and some of the best animation and artwork of the year. I will review season 2 when it comes out, as it is basically a core 2 that was released separately. But with all that out the way, my name is Kikaya, and have a good rest of your day.
リゲインリゲイン僕らのリゲインアタッシュケースに勇気の印遥か世界で戦えますかビジネスマンビジネスマンジャパニーズビジネスマン